Alright, on the coil spring, says you can remove lower control arm, it'll come out easier. It says use a coil spring compressor, but let the axle droop, and I basically just pull this out by hand. There's a little, there's a little stop up here, and on this side, bump up with the edge of the spring hits against. Alright, I got these two little divots, and it turns out from this one, those divots are going to be the top. This part came out, we're just going to snap this guy in here with the end of the spring sitting against that. And we're going to do the same thing on the top part with the divots and stick it back in there. So I think that's next. Alright, I just wanted to mention something I missed a step, which would be the sway bar here, guys. It's supposed to come out after we took off the track bar, before we started on the springs and all that kind of stuff. On the other side, I've got the new spring in. And you know, with that spring compressor, you got to decide where you're going to be able to reach that nut to let it go, because you don't want to do a quarter of a turn with the wrench every single time, because you can't use the impact wrench on it. I'm going to have lunch. I'm going to take off the sway bar first this time. I'm going to take off the spring and put on the new spring. And it's lunch. Alright, for the sway bar, on the top it's a couple 19s, a 19 in the back and a 19 in the front. And since they reverse the bolt for the bottom, it's going to be a 15 on the front and the 19 on the back side. Alright, on the spring, this is what I was talking about. You could just pull it out like that. On the bottom part here, this comes out, there's going to be that little bump. You want to make sure it goes in that same hole. Alright, a spring compressor. It's got these little guys. You're just going to push the pins out, put them over a spring, do the same thing on the bottom. Hopefully you opened it enough to get it over the bottom one. And then you're just going to start tightening these bolts till you get this guy the same size as that guy. So you're just going to tighten these spring compressors until that happens. Alright, on the spring compressors, guys, just keep them opposite of each other. One thing I found out though, my bolt, when I'm tightening it, is starting to go past my spring, which means there's no way I'm going to stick it back on the truck, so I'm going to have to take these off and put them further in the, closer to the middle, so the bolts don't stick past the spring and make it longer than it should be. Alright, getting a little bit of a bad situation here. You can see the bow in the spring. Both my spring compressors, one of them slid around and ended up on the other side. It's only got one side that's being compressed, but you know, just deal with it and get the spring compressors off. Alright, for the shocks, this is a front shock because we're still on the front. I'm going to cut that open. It's going to go up on the bottom. These things should be flat to fit on there, so I'm just going to spin them with the wrench. On the top, I have some parts we talked about before. We're going to put a washer or bushing, and on the inside, on the top, we're going to put a washer and a bushing. On the top ones, it says just tighten this part just enough to make the little bushings compress. And on the bottom, got a 10 and a 13 to retighten the nuts on the bottom down here. We're just going to squish this thing back together. Alright, it's time to put the front sway bars back on. We're going to bolt this one into here. We're going to put the bottom part here. It doesn't really fit in there anymore. It's just going to take a little finessing to get it in there. For this part here, if it doesn't align, you can just move this up really easy by hand. You can just push up this bar. These guys, we're going to torque them to 78 pounds. We're just going to slap in some bolts. My mistake. It was the other side that went in easy, where you could just lift up this bar by hand. This one I had to beat the thing with the hammer. Alright, install track bar. This side here is going to be the passenger side. Ouch. Side with the shiny bolt. It's going to be the driver's side. This little bend is going to face down like it is now. I'm going to put that one in there and that one somewhere over there. So 15 on the bottom. Gonna torque that after we put the top in. For this side, got the adjustable bolt. If it doesn't line up for you, just gonna open this up or tighten it up a little bit to make it line up with the holes on your bolt. It's gonna be this side toward the back, so it goes like that. For the sway bars, we're going to torque them down to 80 pounds. Alright, that guy there on the gold bar with the nut. What it says is tighten that very tight. So, you know, do what you got to do. Use the breaker bar, put all your muscle into it, just tighten it. And then I believe I get to move on to the back. Alright, in case you're wondering, what about all of those control arm bolts I never tightened back up? What the directions say, guys, is to jack up the rear and finish up the rear before you come back and tighten up all the control arm bolts. But there's the front. It's on the ground. Same tires. I think it's higher. I'll find out later. Guys, don't forget to block your tires when you're jacking up the front. These are the blocked rears. Now that I'm going to jack up the back, I'm going to block the fronts. Up at the front, I had 2 jack stands under my axle, or 2 jacks under my axle, and 2 jack stands under the unibody. Probably going to do the same thing here, just so I don't get crushed when I'm banging with the hammer under there, because the hammer's my favorite tool nowadays. Alright, the back's off the ground. Got floor jacks holding the car up. Oh, sorry, jack stands holding the car up. Floor jacks just under the axle. They aren't holding the axle up, they're just there just in case it falls. Got my logs under the front. And what's up next is we're going to remove the shocks. Looks like 2 bolts. Yeah! Alright, a rear shock. Got 19 on the front, a 15 on the back nut. Up top, it's a 15 up there. I'm guessing there's no backside to that one. So we're going to just take off the rear shock. After that is take off the sway bar.